So we move on to our final talk of the morning before the coffee break, and our final speaker is Philippe Camuset from France, who's a practitioner with a very strong interest and great experience in controlling parasites on commercial farms. So Philippe, over to you to take us to the coffee.
Yes, thank you, Andy. I will begin by apologizing for my poor English. I'm a French practitioner, and so I don't use that language with my farmers, and that's not my mother language. So just to begin, to introduce myself, I'm a practitioner in northwestern France. It is a wet and green area like in Ireland, and kind of paradise for parasites too. You have mostly Osteostagia, Coperia, and Pneumococcus, like we said in Arkansas. And so I'm working in practice on 2 spots with 11 vets. And our activity is equally divided in pets and cattle, and we are attending nearly, I think, 35,000 cattle, 2/3 dairy and 1/3 of beef cattle. And so, like Andy told it, I'm involved in parasitology since now, I think, nearly 30 years. And I try to give the best advisements to my farmers since now 20 years. And like said Johannes at the beginning of the morning, as less as possible, as much as required. And we implemented tools to manage as best as possible the parasites in that farms. And so I think now after 2004, we implemented a kind of parasitological audit, and we spend one or with farmers every semester, 6 months. And currently, 50% of farmers are followed up by the concepts, and I think 60% have been for several years at least followed up for that. And so when we began to give those advisements to farmers, it was in the 90s, and in the 90s we are using in my country, preventive treatment with boluses, with the ramectin, after moxidectin, that were very efficacious. And we combined them with curative treatment at housing to eradicate wobble fly, and because we are frightened for type 2 osteoarthritis. And so we realized rapidly that it was too much treatment, because in the second grazing season, we have build-up of osteoarthritis 4 stages on hypobiosis, and sometimes we have type 2 osteoarthritis as calving, as first calving, and we have, as plural us, we can have reduction of the growth performance. So we began to use blood peptinogen dosage at the end of the first grazing season to manage the housing treatment and to look whether it was possible not to treat animals at the first housing. And so we built up a grid with the French results. We have to say that in France, we are dosing peptinogen on hemoglobin, and in the other countries, mostly is with albumin, and our results are half of the other countries. And so we built that grid with 2 limits. One limit below 1,000, below which we considered we have not to treat animal, because the worm burden, the Osteostagia burden was so low that it could not induce pathology or clinical signs. And above 1,750, when we consider the population could be so great to induce a reduction of performance or clinical signs. And between when we are above that limit, beyond that limit, we use macrocyclic lactone to treat them. with a low limit, no treatment, and between the two limits, we use benzimidazoles because we consider that benzimidazoles were able to remain 10% of the Ostatagia adults and 30 to 40% of the fourth-stage larvae. So we assumed that it was able to carry on the build-up of immunity because we know that immunity to Ostatagia is stage-dependent, and you have an immunity towards adults that needs 2 to 3 months of contact with stensil effect and reducing the shedding of eggs. And towards fourth stage, it needs 4 to 5 months, and to induce hypobiosis, for third-stage larvae, we think, according to the publication, maybe it can need 8 to 18 months. And so we assume that preserving a part of the population of Ostatagia during the winter will induce immunity and achieve the immunity for the second grazing season. And so we have not to treat animals on the second grazing season. And so have only one preventive treatment at the beginning of the first grazing season, and the next treatment will occur at the first calving or at the second housing. So only one treatment for all the period, the growth period. So, but what we didn't know, what the pepsinogen was very low, under 800, for example, or low under 1,200 with a treatment with benzimidazoles, what the population was remaining sufficient to induce that immunity. And so we knew that some publications, for example, for Taylor or Claire Boots, show us that when the animals were not treated at housing, the immunity induced was the same, whatever was the treatment on the first grazing season. And when the animal was not immune, they are excreting eggs in high quantity. And so we knew that. There was a chance event for us in 2014. I went in farm for my parasitological audit, and when I went in it, the second grazing season heifers were already turned out. That it is a farmer I know from a very long time. And so the previous year, the pepsinogen were very low on that heifers after the first grazing season. That's at long-acting moxidectin. And so the pepsinogen was under 800. And usually, I would have advised to the farmer to treat them with moxidectin puron to postpone the contact for Ostatagia. And we decided together, according to the previous publications, not to treat animals, but to catch them back 2 months later, to sample them, and to look at the excretion of strongyles eggs. And so you saw that there is nearly no excretion at all, so the animals seem to be immune. So we, in 2015, we renewed the experience, and we took that herd a second time, and we followed 4 other herds with complete data because they were followed by audit of parasitology. And so all that treatment have implemented preventive treatment and have either very low pepsinogen results or moderate pepsinogen results with treatment with fenbendazole. We performed the coproscopy at our practice. We usually realize them. I think we perform between 500 to 1,000 coproscopies each year in our practice. And so we use a McMaster method with a sensitivity of nearly 10 years per gram. And so what are the results? So it's very interesting what you can see at the table. mostly of our herd are using moxidectin of preventive treatment, either long-acting when they are, the calves turn out early, or poor moxidectin, sometimes boluses, but more and more it's moxidectin. And you see there was 3 herds with no treatment at housing, three herds with favorable treatment. And what you can see that we sampled on the 2 years, we sampled 28 heifers, and among that 28 heifers, 21 were excreting no eggs, or below 10 eggs, and all the others were excreting less than 20 eggs per gram. So we can assume that heifers were immune, and they did not need any treatment on the second grazing season. So for induction of resistance is very important for us. Of course, that is a field study in my practice. And so my means are rather limited, of course. And so we can discuss the result, what happens when pepsinogen will be lower than which I meet. It's based on an assumption of acquired immunity towards adults and 4-stage larvae during the winter, but I think it is you have sufficient proof to assess it. The most important bias, I think, is that we are not controlled group or tracer calves, of course. For me, it was absolutely impossible to ask the farmers not to treat in the first grazing season, of course, or to treat animal at housing with very low results of pepsinogen. So I have not controlled groups, and I could not use tracer calves, of course, because of the cost. But I can assume that our results can be seconded by previous publications. Taylor, who told us that whatever was the treatment in the first grazing season, if you have no treatment housing, the animal will be immune in the second grazing season. And worse are the studies of Clairvaux that showed us that non-immune heifers in the second grazing season were excreting between an average of 50 to 66 F per gram, with a range of 0 to 900 X per gram. So we have a very low excretion, and so we can assume that our heifers were immune. So in conclusion, in our country, I think it is in our country and in our condition of farm, of rearing, we can treat the animals only one time at the beginning of the first grazing season to postpone the exposure. And when we use pepsinogen at the end of the grazing season, we can choose the best treatment at housing. And if you have made good work, you use no treatment or fambazole treatment or benzimazole treatment, and so you have useful to treat animal in the second grazing season. So it is very important in terms of economics for the farmer, in terms of ecotoxicity, environmental toxicity, and in terms of technical approach for avoid resistance to anthelmintics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe. We have time for one, possibly two quick questions, if anyone has any before the break. Getting thirsty? Can I just ask one very quick one, and then we'll stop. Any live weight data from the second season? Please? Any live weight croissants?
Yes. Yes, the growth is good. Yeah. Our goal is to have calving at 22 to 24 months. And for me, that is a criteria I have to reach. And so, yes, the growth is a very good one. And in that farmer I'm following for 10 years now. And so if the results are not good, they are going away.
Yeah, good.
So for practitioners, it is a good future. Yeah.
Good, thank you very much. Well, can I thank you all for attending this session, and also obviously all the speakers. Thank you very much for trying to keep to time, all of you. I'm sorry there were time for a few questions, but I repeat, you can try and catch these people later on. So thank you very much, and the next session starts at 11:30, I think. Thank you.